Folks, we have some good news about the fourth stimulus payments that you want to know.
Fixing many of those 3,500 bridges, nearly 10,000 miles of roads in Kansas and Missouri in poor condition, like the Central Avenue Bridge, which was closed earlier this year for fear of failure. A similar bridge not far from here going to Kentucky, there was fear of failure, and it collapsed, killing a whole heck of a lot of people. But this created a whole lot of headaches, wasted time for 8,500 people who used to drive it every single day. The decaying roads cost Missouri and Kansas drivers more than $500 per person per year, the drivers, and additional gas and repairs and longer commute times, and more than $500 in hidden tax on Kansas and Missouri families. And speaking of the cost of living, 2 weeks ago, I announced the largest ever release of the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve to increase the supply of oil to help bring down prices. And I met with our friends around the world. Other countries joined us. And those savings are starting to reach drivers now. Today, the average price you're paying here in Kansas City is below $2 a gallon, $3 a gallon. It's down to $2.90 a gallon, 20% down from a month ago. Nationally, prices are down 7 cents a gallon and continuing to fall. We're making progress. We're going to keep at it to ensure the American people are paying their fair share for gas, not being gouged for gas. And look, as Manuel said, we're in a situation.
The IRS is now urging Americans to get their tax info ready for the next round of stimulus payments, and children in low-income families could receive $10,000 in stimulus check payments before Christmas. So be sure to stay until the end of this video to find out the most important stimulus news. Eligible young Americans, everybody, are going to receive a stimulus check worth $10,000 before Christmas. That's part of the $40 billion higher emergency relief fund. The payments will provide crisis relief payments to students and institutions nationwide. As a result, thousands of colleges have gotten a portion of these funds and have been sending stimulus payments to students. Medical schools also just sent out a $10,000 worth of grants to most of its 956 students. Now, those with direct deposits should have received their payments last week. On average, eligible students received $3,100, with some getting up to $6,500 in grants. And for the second round, students with exceptional financial needs can file an application for funding worth $1,000 each. This is available for those who did not qualify for the initial round. But there is more stimulus checks going out. Eligible Americans can apply for a fourth payment worth $600, and that's part of the $700 million Farm and Food Worker Relief Program. According to the ASDA, the funds are granted to state agencies and nonprofit organizations that provide helpful services to farm workers or meatpacking workers. These $600 stimulus checks to cover expenses and crisis costs are part of the Farm Food Workers Program. That's announced by the U.S. Department of Agriculture earlier this month. The department set aside a whopping $700 million in grant funding for the program. Of that, $680 million is earmarked for farm and meatpacking workers, and the remaining $20 million for grocery store workers. The 2021 tax filing deadline is still months away, but this week the IRS encourages taxpayers to get a head start on preparing their returns, especially those who may need to take action regarding certain payments from the federal government. According to the IRS, you may qualify for the recovery rebate credit as long as your 2021 tax information falls under the guidelines of those who were entitled to the federal government's crisis relief program. Anyone who believes they're eligible for the credit will also need to file a tax return for 2021, regardless of whether they typically file one. At the same time, they will have to show the full amount of their third EIP payment, including any plus-up payments, in order to figure out how much they are owed. The IRS said in a statement that ensuring they use the correct payment amounts will help them avoid a processing delay that may slow the refund. Well, the advanced child tax credit payments also began going out to tens of millions of eligible households, all in mid-July. Families got up to $300 per child under 6, and $250 for every qualifying child between 6 and 17. But because the amounts were primarily based on 2019 or 2020 tax returns, whichever was the latest in the IRS records, some people may have obtained more or less than they were actually owed for this year. According to the IRS, anyone who have collected too much money may have to repay some, or even all of it. On the other end of the spectrum, people who have received less can claim the remaining amount when they file their 2021 taxes. And since only the first 6 months of the child tax credit was paid in advance, the last half of it will be claimed on the 2021 tax return. Thank you again for your support, everybody. I truly appreciate it. If you have any more questions about the fourth stimulus check, then be sure to leave them in the comments below.
Second row.
On the child tax credit, do you think the House should proactively renew the CTC in case the Senate doesn't pass the Build Back Better Act before the end of the year and those benefits expire?
Yeah, it's my expectation that the Senate is going to act and get the Build Back Better Act over the finish line prior to the end of the year. Majority Leader Schumer recently reiterated that commitment. One of the reasons why it's important is because of the pending expiration of the child tax credit, which has been a lifeline for so many different American families, low-income families, working families, and middle-class families, helping to provide families in America at a time when we are seeing some inflationary pressures to pay for child care expenses or educational expenses or food or housing expenses. That's a Democratic initiative that we support, that has been important and critical, and that we are determined to make sure continues.
To follow up on that, though, is there a plan if Build Back Better doesn't get signed into law by the time that this current one expires, and could that become a political problem for you guys, given how much you've touted the expansion of this credit as one of the ways that you are doing things for, voters?
Yeah, I'll yield to Pete as well on this question. Has played an important role as an appropriator in this space, and of course we're all thankful for the leadership of Chairwoman Rosa DeLauro, and I don't think that Chairwoman DeLauro is going to allow this tax credit to expire, and House Democrats will not allow this tax credit to expire, and I don't believe that the Senate will either. President Biden, when he came to visit us, was very clear in what he outlined in the House bill.
For Washington Democrats, 2021 will have one major theme: ramming through inflationary spending on a partisan basis that hurts American families and actually helps China. That's how this all-Democratic government began the year, jamming through a wasteful excuse for a stimulus bill that drove up prices, made supply chain problems even